Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Paradigm Shifts podcast with your host, Keisha Kruger. I'm an organization development practitioner and executive coach, working with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. My personal mission? Share science-based tools and leadership insights from the field that you can use in the workplace and beyond. Considering we spend about 3/4 of our lifetime at work, there is incredible science and organizational psychology that can be used to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. Join me as I speak with thought leaders and business leaders in practice, unpacking lightbulb moments for paradigm shifts. Hello, everyone. On this week's episode, we're chatting with Nicole Greer on building a vibrant culture, and Nicole knows all about that. As a principal coach and CEO of Build a Vibrant Culture, Nicole helps individuals, corporations, government, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits become the people they were created to be through fulfilling a mission to work in teams and exemplify vibrant leadership. Using transformational change, leadership coaching, and training programs, Nicole offers foundational tools and uncommon wisdom to build a vibrant culture. Nicole is a serious entrepreneur with experience in coaching, marketing, mastering first impressions, learning and development, and sales. Nicole is a speaker, trainer, facilitator, executive, and business coach. Visit www.vibrantcoaching.com to learn more. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Do yourself a favor and click it right now. We have got some incredible guests coming that you do not want to miss. Hello, Nicole. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I am so pleased to have you on my podcast. I was just on yours, so it's so nice to be able to switch positions every once in a while, see what it's like on the other side.
Absolutely. Well, us organization development ladies, we can't get enough of this stuff. So if we can find an opportunity to figure out how to talk about it, we've got to get it done.
That's right, and that's when you know you're in the right field, when you're super passionate and we're out here doing the work. And so there's a lot around culture, and that's where I want to chat with you today. Not only about building a vibrant culture, but I think before we get even into that, because that is your brand and I want to hear more, it's really about what is culture, because I think we need a level set, right? Can you kick that off for us?
Yeah, of course. So what culture is it's kind of a big, giant umbrella term, and it's about the social behavior, the group norms, kind of the laws or the rules or the processes and procedures we have in place. It's about the customs that we have in place in terms of what we do in this organization. So it's just like if you came from a big Italian family or a big German family or a big Japanese family, you have these certain things. You have a language that you speak. You have rites, rituals, and rhythms. So it's exactly like how we learned in kind of our social studies book, but now this word translates into our organizations. So it's kind of the environment we're brought up in.
Oof. So it's how we operate. It's how we do things around here, right?
100%.
So then what defines a vibrant culture?
Yeah, well, that's easy. What I think a vibrant culture is happy people working to their full potential. That's what I call a vibrant culture.
Happy people
I think
working to
vibrant
their
is
full
happy.
I love it. So how did you get there? Where did that come from?
Well, the thing is, out there in the world, I'll go places and they'll call me in for training. And when I go in for training, or let's say they call me in for executive coaching or some kind of strategy session, they want me to do some consulting. There's usually people that are pretty unhappy with what's going on. And I tell you, the minute people get some good coaching, they get their head in the game, they shift their mindset, they get happier. They're not thinking about things maybe the way that would really serve their career and their organization. I also think that when I go in, we're having training, not because we're always being super proactive, but we're being reactive to whatever's going on in the current culture. So they'll say, what we need some training about communication. And so there's people who are unhappy about the communication. But here's what I know. Once you get some tools and some strategy systems and smarts in place, and people learn to communicate, you get them talking to each other in that particular session, people go what I call up the feeling scale. And when people go up the feeling scale, we get a lot more work done.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. I think that's really critical to understand the reactive versus, being proactive. Now, when we think about culture, it's so intangible. It's not something you can really touch, right? So, how does someone know what the culture is?
Yeah, I think what leaders need to do is they need to set down in on paper a story about what the culture is like. Now, it could be current culture they could write down, and then I think it's very important to write down maybe an aspirational state. So here's the culture that we're after. My favorite culture is a culture that is full of learning, and again, happy people who are working on developing their potential. And I don't know about you, but when I was coming up through the ranks when I was a youngster and I was, moving through my company, I was super happy if I had a leader who was engaging with me and was looking at me saying, I think you can do better, but not in a way that felt like I was in trouble, but in a way like, okay, I'm going to teach you a little something and then I want you to put it to work. And then I want you to watch yourself be amazing. Somebody who
Okay.
really cared about pulling that potential out of me. And that's what I think people need to do. They have to do two things: get 10 stories in place. There are 10 stories that leaders need to be able to tell. One is about where we're headed. One is this is the kind of culture that we have, and be able to say that to people, be able to articulate it well, and have stories to illustrate that it's happening. And then they need to have employee performance management in place. And
Good.
so, if there is a constant request from the leaders to the employees to develop, to grow, to learn, to get on a career path, I think this makes for a very happy culture, and it becomes tangible because I can see people moving along and I can collect stories. I think storytelling in any culture is huge, and definitely stories of how people are happy, A, and B, how they are reaching their full potential, makes it very tangible to see a vibrant culture.
Yeah, I love that. And storytelling, I also agree, is so, so critical. And out of those three things that you mentioned, where are you seeing organizations maybe missing the mark?
I would say on the storytelling, big time.
Okay.
We're very good about talking about strategy. We're very good at checking in on the budget. We're very good at looking at what needs to be done right in front of us. Very task oriented, but I think there's true value in using our imaginations. And so we need to use our imaginations to cast that vision for the future. And that's not new to people. People have heard for years and years and years in management, you got to have a vision for the future. But I don't think that's a natural skill, especially in the post-COVID world that we're in right now. Leaders are a little gun shy about saying what's going to happen because hello, none of us thought we'd be at home for 2 years zooming. So
So,
so they're a little bit shy about getting out there with that vision, but you have to be a risk taker if you're going to have a vibrant culture and declare what you want in the future. Now, will you get it all? Hopefully, but you
hopefully.
won't get all of it or any of it if you don't cast the vision. So I think leaders have to lead from clarity and have that vision written down.
I agree with that, and I think it's almost like two-sided, right? When you so it is common for leaders to understand to be able to create a vision, you have to have that perspective, that strategic thinking skill set. But the storytelling, that's the other side of the coin is then you're connecting the dots for everyone, right? You're linking up to this is where we are heading, this is where we want to be. What can leaders or managers do to develop that muscle of storytelling if they're not necessarily familiar with that practice?
Yeah, well, first thing I would say is start collecting stories. And in order to collect stories, you're going to have to go out into your environment, out into your culture, out into your,
Oh,
the ranks of your people, and you're going to have to say, "What's going on out here?" And start to collect those stories. And I've got a great little story to tell you, if I
please,
may.
please. I would
Okay.
love to hear that.
Okay, so I was working with the town of Mooresville and I was working with the Public Works Department. So these are the people responsible for the streets, the sidewalks, the trash pickup, water, sewer, all this kind of stuff. So they were looking to uh, really work on the culture inside of the sanitation department. And so one of the things I think people don't understand is like the people that work in the sanitation department are amazing humans. Like you just like my trash just disappear. I drag my bucket out to the side of my driveway. I come back, it's empty.
Exactly.
So is it modern day America wonderful? Well, here's the deal. There are humans inside that truck. And so there were two people that were in a truck together, had been a team for a long time at the town of Mooresville. And one gentleman's name was Barry. And he wasn't a very tall fellow. He was about 5'2". And his partner, George, was about 6'2". So, I mean, can you get this visual in your mind right
Yeah.
now? And so these two fabulous guys have been running this truck all around Mooresville for years and years and years. And so we all know that a lot of people, when they get a position inside of a government organization, they stay a long time. They're very loyal. And so these two fellows were no exception. And so I had the privilege of sitting down and asking them, tell me what you do all day. What do you do? And what goes on out there as you're picking up the trash and getting the recycling going? And they began to tell me how they knew their route up one side and down the other. They knew the names of the people that lived in the houses, and they had several special people that they took special care of. So one was a woman who was housebound and she could not get her trash out. Well, she had a nursing company come to her home, and the nursing company would come in, attend to her, and put the trash in the trash can. But the nursing company was not allowed to roll the container out to the driveway. Wasn't part of the deal. So Barry and George, knocked on the door and got to know this person that lived there and said, would it be okay if we opened the fence, took your container out, brought it back inside the fence? And the woman was like, I'd be delighted, because she'd been asking people to help her, and she just felt like she had so many people that had to help her. And so these two gentlemen would do things like that. And so they told me about how they did special requests for people. And here's the thing. No leader ever asked them to do that. They just did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. So there's a story of culture right there. I mean, like, these guys are great. And just another quick one about my good friends at the sanitation department in Mooresville. Behind a gas station off of Highway 150, there's a ravine, and there's like a little creek back there. Well, this gas station happens to be in a good spot for the people in the sanitation department to fill up with gas. Well, they would go there, and they noticed that people were going behind this gas station and throwing like mattresses and couches and whatever down the ravine instead of taking it to the trash dump. And so they just organized days where they would go and they would fish this mess out of there. And they would, and so like, we don't know what people are doing. And here's the thing, the people inside of the organization at Town of Mooresville, do they need to know that their brothers and sisters that work in sanitation are doing these amazing community efforts? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and then when, like, I'm so happy just talking about George and Barry. I can't really stand myself right now.
I want to be friends with George and Barry right now. It's amazing. Yes.
You absolutely do. These are great people. But long story short, I mean, we started telling stories around inside the town of Mooresville, North Carolina, because it also upgrades the value, right, of some things that we take for granted. So that's just an example. I mean, those are two happy cats rolling around in a garbage truck. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm a leader, I'm going out, I'm going to go collect those stories. I'm going to bring them back into the organization and even share them out with our community. And that is going to bolster it's going to paint the picture of what the culture is like in the company, right?
100%. And I mean, I don't know, those of you listening right now to this podcast, when's the last time you thought about the firefighters, the sanitation workers, the guy who's running, the wastewater plant? That's where all the poo-poo goes. I mean, somebody's taking care of this stuff for you guys.
Why?
And most people don't have a lot of, and I can say this, my government friends will be okay with this. A lot of people don't respect the folks that are our public servants in the way that they maybe should stop for a hot second and think about, what if our city broke down, or our town? What would we all do with our garbage and our stuff? So
we would think about it then. That's sure, right?
Not 100%. But I think that the folks that work in government would do themselves a big favor if they would get these stories written down, and they would tell them, like you're saying. Yeah.
I love that. And one of the important things that you mentioned that I want to call out is that you said there was not a leader who asked them to do that. So when we talk about culture being this intangible thing, it truly could be tangible when you collect those stories, right? We are now
Absolutely.
making an absolute tangible, objective thing. This is how we do things around here. We care about our, the community and the members in the community, and we want to make a bigger impact and leave the world a better place. That's the kind of culture I would want to be part of. So when I was going to ask you, who contributes to impacting a culture? Is it just the leaders, or is it also just anyone who exists within the organization?
Oh, it's all the humans. Every
All the
human
humans.
is contributing. Yeah, and
One.
one thing I want to say about that particular question is a culture. So I want to break it down for folks, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's this big giant thing called a culture. So let's say, for example, you have 500 employees. Okay, so within that one company culture, you're actually going to have many climates, is how I'm going to say it. You're going to have many climates. So, for example, you might have a finance department, and in the finance department, there's kind of a climate over there. Like there's weather going on, there's stuff going on over there. Now, while we may all operate from the same core values or have them hanging in the wall in every department, and have the processes and the procedures manual and the employee onboarding handbook and all the stuff that we put inside of our organizations, that leader in that particular climate of finance is either upholding the culture or not, or creating
Yeah.
their own.
Yeah.
And now all of us have probably heard of this, or maybe even personally experienced it. So I'm in a company. I work in this department, and I work for Susan. Then I see an opportunity on the job board, and I apply for it. And miracle of miracles, I get this new position, and I leave Susan's area, and I go over here to John's area. And it's like, wait a minute, this isn't how Susan did it. I really liked working for Susan. And John, where is John? I mean, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But, these leaders have a huge impact on it. But I also think, in terms of employees, we've got to maintain a way that we are, no matter where we are in the organization, so do leaders. So these climates come together, and it's either a positive culture or it's a negative. And here's what I know. If one of those leaders is super powerful in some way, whether according to the org chart or some kind of, help me with my word, it's not designated leadership. It's like political, like they have some political power
Political
inside.
savvy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
If they have that, they can have a huge impact on the climates around them. So,
Ooh, okay.
so,
Okay.
so, so the leaders can impact that climate, but then if that particular climate is negative and it's next, it works a lot with another climate inside of the organization, like finance works with payroll, and payroll, works with HR. That whole area could get seriously positive and vibrant and amazing and happy, working to our full potential, or it could be a real downer and terrible and awful. Right.
Which is,
So,
we want the powerful leaders that are positive and setting good influence on other climates. What happens if we have a leader who's maybe doing the reverse of that? It's going to spread. Is that what I'm understanding?
it can definitely spread, and it spreads in a couple of ways. One, let's say we have somebody in a department and they are not a great leader, and they're negative. They bring everybody what I call down the feeling scale,
Okay.
and they have a very negative climate. They might interact with another department on the regular, and when that happens, we're going to slow down trust. And we're going to begin to gain a negative attitude because, oh my gosh, I have to call over to that department. I don't want to do that. Will you call over there? No, you do it. It's your job. So we're inside of our happy culture, complaining and whining and upset about these bad people we have to call, right? So it's all the cross-pollination between these different areas. And again, if we harken back to a country, if you live in the northern part of the United States, things are different than the southern part, which are different than the things in the Midwest that are different from the things on the West Coast. So when you have this large culture, it's so important that the executive leader, the CEO, the COO, the chief experience officer, there's all sorts of chiefs up in the C-suite. Those folks have to be so intentional about how they talk about, this is how I want you to run your climate.
I love
Culture
that.
sometimes can be so ginormous. It's almost like, who's going to do this? And that's why I think you said it's like kind of intangible and you can't get your arms around it. But you can
Right.
get your arms around your little part of the world, right? Or part of the company.
I love that. So culture is ambiguous. It's the collective efforts of all the individual leaders that are in charge of these individual climates or teams. And if we get enough really strong, effective leaders in charge of all of these climates, our culture overall it could be really positive. Or let's say we push the um, push the balance more positive. Have you ever
Absolutely.
experienced an employee who maybe is in a more of a negative climate, but they see all this positive culture around them and
Right.
there's some dissonance there, right? And would that break down some integrity in their belief or trust in the company overall?
100%. And that's the guy or the gal that's getting their resume together and watching that HR job board on the regular, right? They're like, I got to
Yeah.
get out of here. I got to get over in John's group or Susan's group or
Yeah.
whoever's the better leader. Yeah, they're absolutely looking for that. And that is why senior leaders, have to do not only the performance evaluation of the company, like what's our revenue, what are our expenses, what are our KPIs, what's production look like, whatever, sales, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. There needs to be a way to look at leaders, I think, in almost a separate process from them having like their annual review, right?
Yes.
So one thing that we could do is we can have annual reviews, and I'm actually a big believer in what I call, again, employee performance management. It's where we're working with people all the time on getting their potential out so they can get happy. But I work with the leader differently because they are so responsible for developing that beautiful climate, which is going to add up and create my beautiful culture. So I think that leaders need to work on three things, and I have a little acronym. It's called LIT. So I say this to people: we're going to get lit, and so people are very excited when they hear that. But basically, what that means is we're going to get fired up on the inside about developing a beautiful climate, which goes into a beautiful culture.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. When you talk about employee performance management, I think, as you mentioned, working with employees and leaders on a continuous basis, I think that feedback loop all across the entire cycle or employee life cycle is really critical, and that we're not
Mhm.
just gauging and measuring year-end evaluation stuff, right? Because that's looking at past performance, but we're taking intentional time and consideration with touch points throughout the year to talk about what's going well now, how can we course correct, and then maybe next quarter. And those touch points are critical for even if a climate is starting to maybe go downhill, shifting it back in the right direction, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what she said, so don't miss everybody what she said. She said, there's stuff in the past. How'd you do this year? Okay, but employee performance management. So thank you so much. Is being clear about setting goals to move people to the future.
Mhm.
And again, it not only do we cast a vision for the company, by 2025 we're going to be doing all this and in these markets and selling to these types of customers, whatever. But there's like, where's Nicole going to be? In 2025, what position will she be in? Now, a lot of leaders are like, well, I can't talk to people about their future. I can't guarantee it. Well, good news. You don't have to guarantee anything, but here's what you can do is you can help an employee reach their potential by
Mhm.
setting goals monthly at the minimum of what they're going to do to improve their skill set, what knowledge they're going to gain, how they might go out and apply that in a new environment, and then get that goal in place, watch that person achieve their SMART goal, and then turn around and go, congratulations, what's next? Because what we want to do is we want to build what Peter Senge said in his seminal book. We want to build what we call a learning organization. So there's this
That's
little
right.
book. It's not a little book, is it? No, it's a big fat
No,
book. It's called Big Fat Book. Yeah, and it's called The Fifth Discipline, which I still love that book. So we both had to
amazing.
read it in school. Yeah.
Yes, we did. And first, you and I both know how important it is for individuals in a company to feel like they are being invested in and that they have the opportunities to grow and develop. But tell those listening just how critical that is. I love when you said, people get afraid of talking to their employees about the future. But what happens if we don't include a future or growth and development opportunities in our conversations with employees?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think people get bored. The really
Good.
smart ones and the good ones will leave and go somewhere else. That's what I think.
Yeah,
And the ones that stay behind are probably have some angst, right? And so
right.
now we're developing that negative culture. We were full of angst. There's no opportunity here. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. May I tell you a story? Because I
Please,
think
please,
stories
please.
illustrate. Okay. So, and I love the stories, everybody. Everybody write down the word stories. Okay. So I was working with this manufacturing organization, and I go in there and I'm going to work with these like mid-level managers. And I have this great group of guys and gals in there, and they're just fun. And I was trying to make them laugh, and they laughed. So that's my favorite audience, one that laughs at my jokes. And so we're going to talk about leadership and everything. And so we get in there, and one of the young men says to me, Nicole, we just can't do that. We can't talk to people about the future because it takes forever. Like, this is the language he's using. It takes forever to move up around here. People just don't quit. And, they don't move on. They're in their job for 30 years. It takes forever. And I said, really? What's your story? How'd you get where you are? And so he says, well, I started working here when I was 17 years old. I started in the apprentice program. They gave me a mentor. And then when I graduated from high school, I got on third shift. And then they made me a team lead. And then they made me a supervisor. And now I'm over the whole third shift. I said, how long will that take? He says, about 5 years. I was like, well, that's not forever. 5 years is not forever. And he was like, oh, yeah, hey, you're right. So sometimes we have like distorted thinking or some belief in place, and maybe he got that from somewhere. It takes forever. But the truth of the matter is that particular organization is growing like mad and looking for people to be in leadership. So sometimes we have a bad belief in place, or we haven't stopped to really look at what the truth is about how people can move up. And so I'm like, dude, you got to get your story written down. That's what my answer to him was, and start telling it to every person that's going to join third shift, and everybody don't miss. Who wants to work third
Absolutely.
shift?
Oh my goodness. And you know what stood out to me with what you just said is that we are circulating stories around the organization that maybe are not true, and they are
Right.
limiting our potential, and they're limiting the potential of those that we're trying to grow and develop. And we aren't challenging the status quo. We're challenging our assumptions enough. So the next time anyone listening that you say to yourself, oh, this is how it's done, I want you to stop, take a pause, and ask yourself, who told me it's done that way? Is
Huh.
it really done that way? Why is it done that way? Can it be done a different way? And just get really clear on the answer for yourself, because I am imagining that we may have a distorted view and we are limiting our own potential and those around us, right?
I 100%. I think you're right.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So, we talked a lot about, what different contributing factors are impacting culture, the teams, the climates, as you say,
Uh-huh.
versus the overall big, huge body of culture. And now I want to kind of pivot a little bit to when we bring people into the organization and how that is a really juicy spot for us to
Oof.
amplify our culture, if you will, because there is an opportunity for our organization to be really awesome at selecting and recruiting. Talk to me about that.
Okay. So your culture starts with the job placement ad you put out there. So that's the first thing I want to say. So I do a little talk. I do it for a lot of Society for Human Resource Management organizations here across America. They're like, let's do the recruiting talk. I'm like, okay. So in that talk, I say, you got to look at your job placement ad. So unfortunately, some people just take the job description for the job and post that out on an Indeed or wherever they post it. And that's a big, big mistake, because what you want to do is you want to put a job placement ad out there that talks about what you're trying to build. And so, Nicole Greer is all about building a vibrant culture. So you need to talk about the fact that you're trying to do that at your organization. If you don't have it in place yet, that's okay. But you can say, this leadership team over here is conscious. The person that interviews you is trying to do this, and you're going to be part of the answer, right?
Can we add stories at this point?
100%. Yes. And here's like a little known fact. Okay. On Indeed, you can post videos and you can post pictures with your job ad. Do people do this? Everybody say no. Nobody does this. But it's sitting right there for you to do. And
talk about illustration, right?
Right. And so you could have a little video that's like, hi, I'm Nicole. Come work for my company or in my department or whatever. And so today's video watching, video game playing generation that's coming to work for us, they will love that. They would much rather watch that video than read your job ad, right? Although you got to do both, right? So
do both.
That's right, do both. But there's a company I worked with for a long while, and it's a credit union, and they are a small but mighty little credit union. And that particular credit union, they had like a backpack drive that they did for their local communities, and like got epic amounts of backpacks and pencils and things donated. I mean, it was just like so much, it was crazy. And then they had like employee appreciation day with like, the cornhole, and the marketing directors cooking hamburgers, and all this stuff is going on. And they had a gentleman inside their organization that was an opera singer, and he was sang in the opera at the Blumenthal. So it was like, put everybody on a bus and take them to the Blumenthal. We're going to go watch him sing in the opera. And so everybody got on the bus and dressed up and went to the opera. I mean, this was their culture. Now they took pictures of all this, put it smack dab right on Indeed, and then the job placement ad didn't read like looking for, teller at the credit union. It read more like this: do you want to be part of a vibrant, exciting community of people who love each other and love serving our members? You must have a half glass full attitude, and like all these kind of things. And I helped him write the job ad. And so some people look at this job ad and are like, that's weird. Half glass full. What kind of crazy outfit is this? And so goodbye. We don't want you to work here. And then other people read it and they're like, oh, this is different.
Oof. Yes.
I want to be part of that. And then they see the pictures of everybody dressed up and at the Blumenthal. Where do you want to work? I want to work there.
But you're attracting and magnetizing towards you the type of candidates that you're looking to bring in that are what I would call a culture ad. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And even if you don't have that like down home community credit union thing going on, you could even say, we're a very serious engineering organization. We plan to grow into 3 markets by 2025. We're looking for the best and the brightest who can develop whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so somebody's going to read that and be like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. And somebody else will read it and go, that's what I want to be part of.
Yeah, it sounds like
I'm a serious engineer.
Wow.
So sign me up.
So they're identifying with the culture prior to even coming on board, speaking to individuals within the company, or even seeing what the environment is like.
100%. And just another little tip for y'all out there, have a link that you click and it goes over to your company website. And then on the HR page, it just doesn't say careers. We're looking for an accountant. We're looking for an accountant. We're looking for an accountant, or whatever, you go to a page, there's a video, all these pictures are on the website. And then there's like, and here, all you have to have is this thing right here, this cell phone right here, this iPhone right here. And you go through and you go find a young person or person my age, and you say, you're an accountant here at XYZ company. What's it like? And as long as this is a happy person who's working on their potential, they'll be glad to do a little video. It didn't have to be fancy. Throw it up on the website.
Absolutely.
It
And
would
that's more
blow people's
authentic.
minds.
And so that's such incredible practical tips to take away. And thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And now I'm imagining so much illustration in this conversation. I'm like, imagine you've got me in the mode to imagine now.
Yay.
I'm imagining we brought these candidates closer to us who are more in alignment with the culture, how we do things at our company. How do we know if this is the right person for us?
Okay, well, then you're going to have to. Okay, so here's my philosophy on interviewing and finding out whether people are right. So, inside my company, Build a Vibrant Culture, we actually have a recruiting arm. So, if we do this all the time, so we don't set up a phone interview with people. I think this is a huge waste of time. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to set up phone interviews with people. Waste of time. So what you do?
You heard it here first, folks.
I mean, you just call them. You don't set it up. You just start dialing people's phone numbers on their resumes. Now, honest to goodness, people do this. I will call somebody's phone number on their resume. Okay, I have their resume. Means they're looking. And I'll call their phone number and it'll be like, the voicemail is full and you cannot leave a message. And I'm like, what? So you're out. You're out. If you cannot manage your email or your voicemail, you certainly can't manage being an accountant at my very fancy company. So you're out. Right. And then other people will be like 2:00 in the afternoon and I'll be dialing for people, and they'll be like, hello. I'm like,
sleeping.
Hey, what are you doing? Taking a nap. I'm not sure if the work ethic's there, But anyway, I just pick up the phone. I try to catch people in their, don't miss this, authentic state. And here's what will happen. You'll dial for people on your 10th person. The person will be like, hello. And you're like, hot dang, I got a live one here. They know how to answer the phone. And so you get them on there, you have this impromptu conversation. And when you ask them some general questions, tell me all about you, tell me why you're looking for a job, what are you hoping will be different in your new position? And they can just be like, talk about it. You've got yourself a real sharpshooter in the situation. And you're like, hot dang. So then you set up the 1-hour interview. And so when I set up that 1-hour interview, I do it over Zoom and I get permission to record it. And this is so fantastic because I can relax in the interview. I don't have to take a ton of notes. If a thought comes, like I'm going to ask her this next, I might jot down my next question, but I don't have to take all these notes. So I interview the person and it's so fantastic because later on you can rewatch it. Because in the heat of the moment, you're kind of like, oh, I have to interview the person. So your focus sometimes is more on what am I doing versus what are they saying?
Or like, what's the next question I'm going to ask? You're not as present. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can rewatch it later. And don't miss this, everybody who does interviewing. You should watch yourself interview somebody.
Oh, such a learning opportunity. What a feedback. Feedback is a gift, right? We can give it to ourselves. That's
right. Because you'll be... Right. Well, I was just on a call this morning with a group of people, and the lady was talking about how when I'm in an interview, I'm really trying to sell this person on the position. And I thought, no, don't do that. No, not yet. You have to get them to sell themselves to you, and then you'll sell them on the position. I mean, people who are sharp and understand how careers work and have some business acumen, which is who you want on your team, they're going to come prepared to sell you. And you really don't want somebody that has to be sold.
They've done their research in advance, right? Like they know this is the type of company that they are interested in, that aligns with the work that they want to do, right?
Yeah, and I'll come to an interview, I catch them off guard with the phone thing, but then before they do the 1 hour, they go check me out as a recruiter. And so the sharp ones will be like, oh, I checked out your LinkedIn and I know you do this and I know you do that. And I'm like, oh, I love a researcher. I want this guy on my team, So, that's what I would call a vibrant employee, or the vibrant employee, one that takes the initiative and, is shines, right?
Takes the
So,
initiative is huge. Yeah.
yeah. So that, and so through that interview process, you interview, and then the thing we can do is once we do this interview, we can pass that interview around. Now we've told the candidate, there's certain people that will watch this interview, and we can have different people look at that interview. Saves tons of time, money, energy, and I don't know if people out there do this. I'm not a fan. The group interview.
Uh, Tell us
Because
why.
because there's too much dynamics between the interviewers and the interviewee. I think it's very intimidating to have like 4 people interviewing one poor soul. I think you'll do a much better job of interviewing if you do 4 interviews. Okay, because
Yeah.
I come at this company a certain way with my personality, my style, right? Which is going to be different from everybody else. Everybody in my company is different from me. Right. We all know we have, the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, the whatever.
Certainly.
And so I'm going to ask certain questions, and I need to have a little bit of control over the questions I'm asking. I need to follow my curiosity. I need to follow my intuition with this candidate. Then step back, let the other person ask the questions. And for example, probably many of the people that listen to your podcast are familiar with like personality assessments. Usually there's the bubbly, outgoing, fun, creative marketing, sales, people person. That's what I am. So I'll ask questions in that way. But then if my husband, who helps me recruit, if he asks questions, he is more of a conscientious, T crosser, I dotter, structure system, get her done.
Detail. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to ask different questions, and he's got to follow his intuition and his curiosity. And we can see how the candidate does. So I think separate's better, much better.
And then do you cross-reference your notes afterwards?
Of course.
Awesome.
Yeah. You cross-reference, and then after that, maybe then you take this candidate here. I'm also a big fan of this. So let's say we get down to 2 candidates, right? I think you should take the candidate, first of all, and bring them over to your place and say, I need you for 8 hours. This is your 8-hour interview. And they're like, what? You're like, come on over. I want you to check out the place. You need to know where you're going to be working.
And by place, she means workplace, not their home, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Okay.
clarity. Thank you for clarity.
Please don't take candidates for an 8-hour interview to your home.
No, because you'll be in HR in a hot second and reported to the police. But anyway, no, you bring them over to your organization, to the office, and you show them around. You say, I'd like you to like mark the whole day off your calendar and come visit us, because that's where we're selling at that point, right? And so like, come on over. This is where your cubicle might be. I want you to have, and one of the things I love to do is, if you can't, I don't like the group interview, but I do like what I call key interviews. So I might get the marketing director on the calendar with the candidate for 15 minutes, even though they're going to be in accounting. I get them on 15 minutes with the CEO, 15 minutes with whoever, 15 minutes with this VP of whatever. And that person, if they can kind of navigate, because are they going to have to navigate that once they're hired? Everybody say, yes. So we bring them in, and then I think you should go break bread with them. Take them to lunch, see how they do at lunch, see if they can handle the whole thing. You're really going to know at that point if it's going to fit in. So the credit union I was talking about earlier, I had a gal, her name is Patty. And Patty, I interviewed her over the Zoom and then shared her video or whatever. And then she came up to the home office and like spent a whole day. And everybody at the end of the day was like, we love her. Oh my God, she's awesome. So it wasn't like it was a rolling of the dice.
Right. When you are making that offer that this person is a good fit.
100%. And she's doing amazing stuff over there. And at the same time, Patty calls me. She's like, this is a great place. I'm like, I know.
I would love for everyone listening to really think about how you can apply this approach and customize it for your organization. Sure, tailor it, however, but just really think about how you can apply this, because what I hear often is from managers and leaders is we got this person in and they were really great on paper, or they were really great in
Right.
their interview, but then like a month or two or a week or two down the road, it wasn't the same person we thought, or maybe their skill set was a little different than what we thought. Because there's a lot you can't see in with behavioral interview questions or
100%.
hypothetical interview questions, right? We need to be able to get them in the environment and experience them as another human being would experience having, a conversation with another human being. So I love, love, love that. For everyone who is curious about all the tips and knowledge and services that you, Nicole, provide within your company, please share how they can contact you and a little bit about your podcast as well, because we're going to link it in the show notes. But it's so helpful, I think, if everyone's like, okay, where do I get more? Where do I get more? Where do I get more? You've brought so much insight and wisdom. Please share.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely go to www.vibrantcoaching.com. That's my website, and I'm over on the LinkedIn, of course. And so if you go to LinkedIn and you type in Nicole Greer, Build a Vibrant Culture, I'll pop right up to the top of the search. And I would love to be linked in with you there. I'm also on, all the stuff, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook, all those places. I hang out all those places. And then my podcast is the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. And you are so generous to be on my podcast. And I have just an eclectic group of people who are on my podcast. But the number one thing we're trying to answer is, what is leadership? And we talked today here on this podcast about how that leader in that climate and the leader that oversees all those climates, has to have people in place that understand what the vision is and they're lit from within. And so leaders need to lead with clarity. They got to have that written down, a set of 10 stories. They've got to have their vision. Here's where my department's going. And if our department goes there, the whole company goes there. They're working on the quality of everybody's character, which is a real challenging subject. And then we learn to transcend the ordinary. We realize that the only way a company stays afloat is if it's growing. You cannot stagnate. But remember in Monopoly, when you played Monopoly, you had to get more and more houses and hotels. That's true in business. You got to get more and more houses and hotels.
Yes.
And you can't quit. You can't just be playing with your brother who cheats and say, "I quit. I'm not playing Monopoly with you anymore." You have to keep trying, until you get.
I love that analogy. That's amazing. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So those are all the places you can find me. I would love to meet you all.
Yes, please head over, subscribe to her podcast right now. And I have one final question to nobody's surprise to kind of close us out today. And that is, what's the most recent paradigm shift that you've experienced?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. And it's so important because we have to change our thinking all the time, make it better. All right. So I was asked to do this program on change management. And I was like, okay. And so I put together this whole program on change management for this expertise in leadership training for a manufacturer. And I'm sitting down and putting this content together. And I'm like, wait a minute. Stress management is a big part of change management. People get stressed out during change. So I'm like, put that in there. And then I'm thinking some more, and I'm researching, I'm putting my stuff together. And then I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Emotional intelligence. That is so required for change management. In fact, when you get overstressed, you might not be emotionally intelligent anymore. Wait a minute. That's a huge part of change management.
Yes.
So I'm put that in there. And then I'm thinking about, and I'm like, time management. Wait, time management is a huge part. So, one thing I think we do out there kind of in the OD world, organization development world, is we split these things apart. But essentially, again, like I just said, if you play Monopoly and you put 3 more hotels on Park Place, you've just changed your whole company. And what's that going to require? It's going to require your people to be very good at stress management, time management, emotional intelligence, and then, of course, project management. So work of doing business requires you to have some acumen, some business acumen in all of these areas. So you don't get to opt out of any training. You got to go to it all.
Gotcha.
So, you need change management training. Your company's going through change, and you need to have all these little pieces to the puzzle so that your people can be happy and working at their full potential, which will get you a vibrant culture.
I love the work that you do. And thank you for dropping that as like the final closeout, because we talk about change management from our world, our field, our space.
Right.
But our employees need that training. They need to understand how to manage stress, how to combat change fatigue, how they can get the information they need to feel regulated and safe, secure, stable in their environments. And oh my gosh, it's not just on the leaders to set that initiative. It's also our employees, to our individual contributors, to take that effort into their own hands and take accountability. And I love, love, love that you share the breakdown of change management and how critical it is. So thank you, Nicole, for not only your time here, but for all the work that you're doing and spreading all this goodness, wisdom, and knowledge out into the world. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to leave a review, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening. If you know a business leader in practice or friend who you think would be interested in this episode, please consider sharing it with them. I'm so grateful for your support. For more updates, you can follow us at Paradigm Shifts Podcast on Instagram. See you on the next episode.